Hello, this is Sergio Marrero, and today we're here at RBL1 Live with Edrizio de la Cruz. He's CEO of Arcus. Arcus is a fintech company powering the future of finance, and we'll talk more about that. Edrizio himself is a graduate, Wharton MBA, also worked at JP Morgan. He's an Echoing Green fellow and graduate, also a Startup Chile alumni as well, a fellow alumni from there, and Y Combinator alum. We'll talk more about his startup and all he's done. He's raised over 13 million in venture capital for his venture. One of the few Latinos of color in the space, originally from DR. So honored to have you, Edrizio. Thanks for joining us today.
Awesome, buddy. How are you, man? Good to see you again.
Yes. So for everyone watching, can you share a little bit more about what is Arcus?
So Arcus, we're building the fintech as a service infrastructure across the Americas. So the Americas, specifically Latin America, is actually one of the fastest growing fintech markets in the world. However, the big problem is that there isn't a pan-regional or an infrastructure that serves multiple countries. So when a company wants to launch fintech product, regardless of that company is a bank or a retailer or a tech company, they have to kind of piecemeal a lot of services, aggregate a lot of different services. And we built the very first kind of one-stop shop for fintech products, kind of fintech in a box that gives you access to multiple countries. So today we work with some of the biggest banks in the region, like BBVA, Santander, big fintechs like Alvo, Cuenca, and Rappi, and big retailers like Walmart, 7-Eleven. Our big mission is to help bring fintech and democratize access to fintech across the Americas.
That's great. I know being in, going to Startup Chile and working down there, there's a little bit of the culture of stuck in the ways of doing things of the past. How has that been for you as you've been building out Arcus? What has helped you move them into doing business digitally?
Well, a lot of entrepreneurship, as you know, is partly a lot of hustle and development and being right place, right time. It's better to be lucky than smart, so to speak. So we spent about 7 years kind of building the infrastructure. And then about 2 years ago, the whole wave around fintech, neobanks around Latin America really started to develop and evolve. And what we started kind of positioning ourselves was that, well, we already have parts of the fintech product. We started working on bill pay and top-ups. And then we became a licensed money transmitter last year. And as years progressed, we started building a more complete set of offerings. And today we power over 80 clients, banks, fintechs, and retailers. Virtually any company that wants to launch a fintech business across the Americas, specifically in Mexico, is doing it on top of us today. And our goal is to kind of, again, democratize access to financial services across the region. And one interesting element behind what we're doing that I think it's quite important, it's that in doing what we're doing, in order to do it across Latin America, you need to help bank the underbanked. A lot of Latin America, as you know, 70% of Latin America is underbanked. So we've built a cash-in network, a retail network where a consumer can go in to a retailer like a Walmart, 7-Eleven, pop up their RappiPay app, deposit cash, scan a barcode, and that digitizes that consumer, and in essence, both digitizes and bankifies that consumer in 30 seconds. And we think that first mile entry point is the key to banking the underbanked around the region. And we already have the infrastructure, we already have the licensing, we just got to keep expanding it.
That's amazing. And I know, especially with platforms like Arcus, like Stripe, right, powering actually enabling entrepreneurs to go to get money, to move money. I think it's a infrastructure people take for granted now. So I'm glad you all are building it. Want to talk more about you? How can you talk about how you started your journey, and how did you end up? I know you studied finance at Broke College, and how did you go from there to being CEO of Arcus?
Good question. I think I have the most odd background I've ever seen in tech. So today I'm the co-founder and CEO of the company. Just to give you context, we're about 60 people based in two cities, New York City and Mexico City. About 8 clients, push about $1 billion to payments now. So we've gotten quite sizable. And sometimes I got to pinch myself because I can't even believe I'm here. Just to give you context, I grew up in Santo Domingo, and not the nice part either. Immigrated to the South Bronx when I was 12 years old, didn't speak the language. At age 18, started college and joined the U.S. Air Force because I was enamored with becoming a fighter pilot. But those dreams were quickly squashed when my parents had to kind of quit both to go make ends meet. And I became an airplane mechanic at JFK Airport, if you believe that. So for the next 7 years, I actually worked nights and weekends. Went back to college. It wound up taking me 7 years to get a 4-year degree. I went to multiple colleges, not just Baruch. I went to community college, actually, and then transferred to Baruch. And I graduated college at age 25. So, but that didn't stop me. I wanted to take a major step forward. And what I said to myself, well, if I'm going to graduate with a college degree, might as well push it to the limit, push it to the max. And at the time, the best job you can get out of college was become an investment banker. And banks weren't exactly hiring many former airplane mechanics that went to community college and city college, but I didn't let that stop me. I interviewed 33 times, got 33 no's. There aren't 33 banks in New York, but I interview every one 3 times. But lo and behold, I got an opportunity to intern at UBS Investment Bank. I loved it. Did 100 hours a week with a smile on my face. Traded my coveralls for a bookfiller suit, never looked back again. And then ultimately got an opportunity to work at JP Morgan. And that was kind of a fascinating experience, just being kind of this ecosystem around really smart people, really driven, really gung-ho, really motivated. And parlay that into getting into Wharton, which was a fantastic experience in and of itself. Worked with a ton of really smart, young, bright people, which again, it was another world for me. I had never just gone to school. I have been working since I was 12, even through high school, community college, and college. So the first time I got an opportunity to just focus on education, and I saw the value of it, and I saw the value of kind of the mastermind group element, like being around, just by virtue of being around smart people. Smarter than you are, you become smarter. And then you start seeing, comparing, and contrasting that versus kind of like my high school upbringing, growing up in places like South Bronx and Harlem, like how distinctive the two worlds are. So when I was finishing business school, I was really passionate about giving back. I just felt so blessed that I wanted to build a company around financial inclusivity, and that's why I started Arcus in 2013.
That's amazing. Each step of the way, going from working, you said working as an airplane mechanic, like not supporting your family through the experience. Also letting the audience know that not forgetting your Santo Domingo roots. That's where you are right now.
Yeah, that is where I am today.
Yeah, can you share a little bit more about why you're why you're there now? And I know how and well, I would say first, like, can you share a little bit more how COVID's impacted your business? And we'll dive in there.
Sure. So COVID, it's been quite shell shocking for, I think, every company across every industry. Some got hit harder than others. The lion's share of what we do and our revenue, it's driven by bill pay. So we're an infrastructure layer that connects to multiple billers. So think of paying your cell phone, cable, electricity, student loans, credit cards, any kind of bill pay, any kind of recurring liability to bill pay. So we become the de facto infrastructure for paying bills in Mexico specifically. And today we power a number of clients. Because of the nature of our product, we haven't been that affected, to be quite honest with you, because people still have to go out there and pay a bill. I know a lot of companies have taken a big hit. Some have actually disappeared. This has been tough for a lot of tech companies. So we haven't been that affected. Some clients get delayed. some, we work with big banks, and they kind of reprioritize certain initiatives. So they may get delayed a few months, but we haven't, thankfully, been that adversely impacted.
Got it. And right now, I know you're how is it operating an international business that runs it? You have Mexico City, New York, and you're in Santo Domingo. How has that been for you during this time?
Yeah. So my wife and I were in San Francisco when this whole thing started happening. We were based in New York, but went to San Francisco to start raising capital, and then this started happening, and I saw the states not really taking it serious. San Francisco was an early adopter of the stay at home shelter order place, and we decided, let's just leave the country because this is going to get worse before it gets better, and we were right. But came here 17th of March, 18th of March, the government issues kind of a lockdown. So borders get lifted, no flights in or out, and everything shuts down for the next 3 months. Just last week, there was an election, so borders came down, and the curfew came down too. So now I can go back. But yeah, it's been quite interesting. I've been operating out of my father-in-law's kind of like house here for the past 3 months, and it's pretty smooth actually. We were already used to working remote, but yeah, it's been pretty nice. I mean, for us, it's pretty easy, and I think it kind of forces everyone to rethink work and rethink the office.
Yep.
Just how not that difficult it is to be fully remote. I myself am a big proponent of face-to-face and in person. I mean, having been in banking and business school, I think most of the communication is nonverbal, and it's the physicality element behind it. I'm a big believer. I'm not saying 100% remote, but I am saying that you could theoretically run a business mostly remote.
Yep, absolutely. And I want to call out what you were talking about when we first. I mean, I think we've connected before, but I was talking to you, Edrizio, when you were starting your round, and I remember learning more about you and saying, I love you. I would love to invest. I wish I had well, I was gonna say couldn't invest then, can't invest yet. I was like, didn't have a big enough check to write to make a difference for you and your business, but wanted to applaud 13 or 12.9, 13 million you've raised. That's quite a feat. Can you talk about raising in this time, or in raising in general, and some of the what you've done to accomplish that, especially I would, not only during COVID, but also as a person of color, Latino in the space. Can you share more about what it took to get to where you are right now in terms of raising capital in the space?
Well, so that's a good question. So let's break that question down into 3 parts, which is just raising venture capital, raising in COVID, and raising as a person of color, right? So raising traditionally, raising venture capital, obviously it's quite a complex process because there is no manual behind it. There's no manual for entrepreneurship, period, right? Like if you want to be an accountant, there's a process for that. If you want to be a doctor, there's a process for that. If you want to be a lawyer, there's a process for that. There's no process for entrepreneurship. Incubators like Y Combinator do the best they can to bring structure to an otherwise unstructured process, which is entrepreneurship. And they do a fairly good job at it, and hence the success rate. So there's a lot of complexities just because there's no process. Even VCs themselves, they say they have a process, but they really don't. Most of them you just pitch them and they figure it out. As everything is very wishy-washy, right? Which is hard because the way all of us are educated, right? It's very structural, right? You go from first grade to second grade, from third grade to fourth grade. You get, your grades are A, B, C, D, and you go to school from these times. So we grow up in a very structured regiment, and then you're thrown into entrepreneurship, and then it's just kind of a guacamole, and nothing makes sense, and there's no accountability.
I love that. Yeah.
I think that's one of the hardest aspects of entrepreneurship, that kind of cognitive dissonance, that dichotomy between unstructured and structured. And it's double when you have to raise capital because it's up to you to create the structure. You would think the venture capitalists have to do it. And again, Y Combinator, one of the biggest values, not simplifying what they do, but they just build structure around the process. When you ask most people raising capital how to raise capital, like, and it's like they'll tell you that they talked to a couple investors, but the real successful ones had a process. And when you have a process, then that puts you in the driver's seat, and you can exert leverage even if you don't have leverage, and that helps you figure out and create it, make a process that otherwise wouldn't be competitive, make it competitive, and that dramatically enhances your probability of success. I don't care what business you have. I don't care if you're, selling, shoes online, or you're building kind of a fintech API. Having a process, running a process, it's a big element behind it. And there's other elements behind it, which is, how to pitch, how you present, having a VBR and all those things. But I think a process and how you pitch are probably the biggest two. And that takes a while. Like anything in life, the more reps, the better. And that can actually take years to develop. It's like being a pro athlete, right? The more reps you do, the better. At this point, I've had at least 1,000 reps of just pitching to VCs. 1,000 and rep. You become an natural at it, right? Which takes me to step number 2, which is raising during COVID. A lot of raising capital, again, process is one element. COVID throws a big kind of wrench in that process of creating a process, because now everything is virtual, right? Again, 87% of communication is nonverbal. So it's harder to communicate and instill trust in a person when you're doing it through Zoom. It's just harder, right? It's harder to pitch. It's harder to communicate trust because you can't meet the person. So it's really hard to instill that. And then you add the element, the fact that, we're going through a global pandemic, and this VC is sitting at home watching the news, which is never positive, and their VCs are supposed to be the most bullish investors in the world. And even the most bullish investor in the world is going to be a little bearish when they read the news, and you have, it's like COVID, and you have all kinds of things around social injustice, and then you have Trump, who's the gift that keeps on giving every day. And you're an investor, you're like, what's going on in the world? Maybe I shouldn't invest. Maybe this is not the best time to write a check on this company. Maybe I take a step back. But they can't say that publicly, right? They have to say, we're open for business, because their LPs are watching. So what happens is they still take the same number of meetings, but they write less checks. So I would say that this year you'll see half the checks you've seen last year. And hopefully next year you see, twice the checks that you saw in 2019. So maybe it goes like this and then like this, hopefully, right? So I think that's the hope. But yeah, I think, and even a lot of the races that you've seen are races that were done right before COVID happened, like February, March. So that's another element. That's been quite interesting, raising capital. And let's talk about the other one, which is the raising as a person of color. And this is a topic that I'm deeply passionate about.
Yep.
Deeply passionate about, because someone that, like me, I've seen the entire spectrum of kind of being not only a person of color, but being a person that grew up in poverty and now have an opportunity to give back and be in a different place altogether. So I'm very blessed. So I'll tell you an anecdote that quite reflects it quite well. So when I first did investment banking, remember I spent 6 years at that point in time as an airplane mechanic, right? The habits that you build being a blue collar worker are not quite suited to being in investment banking, which is arguably the most white shoe office job you can have. Is the most prestigious job you can have, especially at a company like JP Morgan. I show up first day, and I show up a minute late, I have cufflinks. I have flashy socks. And in the meeting, I don't take notes. I had a mentor who was watching. He stopped me as I'm leaving the meeting. Everybody leaves, like, Edrizio, just sit down. First of all, you're a minute late. Number two, you have cufflinks. Analysts and interns never have cufflinks. Number three, your clothes are too flashy. Tone it down. And number four, you didn't take notes, right? And he said, and I remember us saying this, like, well, you know, I would say, so what? But the other intern also was late, also didn't take notes, and they also have cufflinks. And he told me one thing that I'll always remember is that you don't have the privilege. So you have to be twice as good. The other intern looks like everybody else here. You don't look like anyone else. So you have to be twice as good. You gotta be earlier, you gotta take twice as many notes, and you gotta stay up twice as long as everybody else. Twice as good as everybody else. That's the rule from now on. 5 minutes early is on time. Good is not good enough. And I was part of this program called SEO, Sponsor Certification Opportunity, which totally changed my life because they give you these rules and tips for life, for kind of code switching, so to speak, that no one talks about, right? You're not, as a person of color, you're not educated that you are different in this workforce. You are taught that, you know, color doesn't matter. And up until that time, that's what I believed. I was quite naive because I hadn't experienced, you know, what John Rice at MLT calls third-degree racism. But this person, I remember his name, Jorge Solar, taught me otherwise. He was my SEO mentor. And then I started instilling a lot of those practices. And it took me a while to get better at it. It took me a while to, you know, not only show up on time, show up earlier, check my work, not 2 times, but 3 times. I actually took public speaking classes, you know, becoming more eloquent, enunciating, not reducing my accent, because I had a really strong Dominican accent. Mind you, I had grown up in the hood. Like, I would talk like, yo, what's going on, my man? What up, son? That's how I grew up talking most of my life. So being able to kind of untrench that part of my brain that used to speak in a particular way, it really took a long time. But thanks to SEO, it totally changed my life. It really put me in a different trajectory. And so when I think about that, most founders of color don't have a Jorge in their life or an SEO in their life when they're going out to become an entrepreneur, right? And so what tends to happen is that if no one tells you there's a problem, you don't think there's a problem. And again, I had a similar experience at Y Combinator. And again, this is why Y Combinator is so amazing. I was presenting, I was practicing my presentation just by myself. I was getting ready for demo day. And then this partner passes by and he says, like, Edrizio, good pitch, but you sound like you're scaring me. I'm threatened by you. Cool it down, step down, don't eat your words, enunciate better, articulate better, and don't be so aggressive. And like that type of commentary really helps you. I think it's the difference maker between raising 13 million and, you know, $1,300, quite frankly, because you're stepping into their world, right? And unfortunately, there isn't a safe space in Silicon Valley today to communicate those nuances and those intricacies and those gaps that really should be communicated, right? When a venture capitalist is investing in a company, they're investing in you, the founder. I would say up until B. Right? I would say that's 50% of their investment rationale is, can this girl or guy win? Are they going to break through walls and they're going to figure things out? And you need to understand the VC's mindset. They are not good at some things, but they're experts at pattern matching. And what the algorithm in their head says, every founder that's won looks like this, and every founder that I've met looks like this, and then this one looks like that. And remember that VC, it's not like they work for themselves. They have to hit their numbers. VC is already risky. So whatever investment they're making, they're taking a huge risk. So for them to invest in something that doesn't look like the winning horse is a huge, another level of risk. So I kind of empathize the rationale behind the lack of diversity. I understand it, but I think a lot of founders of color don't understand it, right? And what's happened in Silicon Valley over the, what I've seen over the past 7 years is that Silicon Valley has an issue with diversity because I have asked the questions many times to a lot of people, and their response is always the same. It's always like, if you're good, you'll find a way, and the markets are efficient. The markets will fill the gaps. And I'm like, no, dude, no, that doesn't when affirmative action was instilled in Wall Street, like before in the 80s, you'd see almost no black or brown people on Wall Street. Today, you walk into an investment bank and you see a lot of black and brown folks. A lot of had to do with affirmative actions and had to do with the banks championing that internally because they realized they had an issue. And organizations like SEO, Twigo, and MLT have done an incredible job at making that change take place. And then I also give credit to the banks themselves because they saw this makes sense, this is good for business. And that was the early 90s. I would say Silicon Valley is still in the late 80s when it comes to diversity. They're still they're just now understanding this is an issue. Like literally like 2 weeks ago, like they're just now understanding, oh, okay. Yeah, so black and brown represents 30% of the population, but only 1% of venture capital. So there's a systemic issue happening here. So I'm excited for what's happening, but I think that we have, decades of work ahead of us to institutionalize diversity in Silicon Valley.
And on that topic, I know Black VC, All Raise, have all called to arms, trying to get and elevate, include VC is another, have focused on trying to diversify the set of investors as we're trying to do also at RBL1. Besides that, what are some institutional things that you believe need to happen to confront the systemic racism that's embedded within the system? How do we make more change faster?
So I had this conversation with Chu from SoftBank. He's a great guy. And we had a pretty good conversation about this. Like, he's told me, well, there's a lot of great conversations happening. It's a lot of great dialogue. But dialogue isn't going to make a difference. We've been having dialogue for the past 3-4 years about this. And I was like, I completely agree. People need to, put their money where their mouth is. Money talks, bullshit walks. And I think what we need to see is, VCs need to start writing checks. That's it. Like, check first, advice second. All right.
The hire or wire. That's it. Yeah.
I mean, that's it. To me, is that there's a kind of a, I don't know, call an idiom within the Jewish community. I have a lot of Jewish friends, and they say we invest in the Jewish community, we buy from the Jewish community, and we hire. So invest, hire, and buy, and that's how the dollar circulates in the community and it propagates wealth, right? Which wealth sticks around for generation, and we don't have that yet, right? We still have dialogues, and we have lots of people talking about it, and no one doing much. Even the VCs that are of color in the Valley talk about it, but when you look at their portfolio, it doesn't reflect the message that they're putting out there, right? There's very few VCs of color. So we need to start changing things. I personally try to done my best. We hire people of color. We're 95% people of color. We buy from a lot of tech companies that are led by people of color. We actually, 3 of our biggest vendors are led by Black or brown people. And I'm not an active investor, but when I can, I invest. I invested in a company, Camino Financial. Sean Salas went to HBS, and it was an insignificant check. But the way I see it is like, well, if I can back this guy, then I can say to other investors, I invested in him. Please talk to him. He has my stamp of approval. So what people need to understand, a lot of POC people call their investment. The reason why the dollar amount matters, but not as much as the symbolic amount, the symbolic investment. And when you say to another investor, hey, like, I'm an investor in this guy, they're not going to ask how much you invested, whether it's, you know, 1,000 or 100,000 or $1 million. It's like, I invested. Like this is not bullshit. Now, like, you got to step up. And I feel like as people of color and predominantly Hispanics, we've failed dramatically at this, but that also creates a massive opportunity to fix it, right? So I'm excited. I want to be more involved in these things. I'm actually actively working with a couple of organizations to start doing things, because I don't see much action happening. So I think in the next couple of weeks you'll see some news and some new endeavors. Well, next couple of months, because I have my full-time job. So
that's right.
But yeah, I'm excited because that means it's a lot work to do, and we can be
right.
part of something amazing that's going to last for the next 50 years, right? So I'm excited for that.
Awesome. No, enjoy the work you're doing, and let us know how we can help as well. And shifting gears for you, as you're looking into, you know, you just raised, you know, you're hiring, you're getting ready, shifting back to the digitization, right, of finance, especially and in this socially distant world. What do you see are some of the most exciting trends in the fintech space that keep you up at night?
Well, specifically in Latin America, there's a huge tidal wave towards digitization, again, because most of people in Latin America, 51%, are underbanked. Visa highlighted this, that in the month of April, they had 13 million people do their first digital transaction. So we think it's an impetus for action. It's an impetus for change. We work with a lot of neobanks in the region in Latin America, and as a result, we've seen a pretty good spike in growth. So we think that the digitization of the underbank is going to be a constant theme for the next couple of years, as long as people are remaining more at home to do things that they otherwise would have done, right? When you're underbanked, you still have to do financial services, so to speak, like go picking up money and go paying a bill. And instead of doing that by cash, you can now do it on your phone. That changes your behavior completely. So I think that's one of the biggest themes.
Awesome. And I know you just partnered with Visa, so congratulations on
thank you.
And can you share more about the partnership and what's next for Arcus?
Yeah, so we participated in something called Visa Everywhere Initiative, which is a competition. About 1,300 companies apply. We went through the process. We got selected as a semifinalist and as a finalist, and then we were lucky enough to win the competition. So we're now in the process of building a partnership, and the goal there is exactly what I just mentioned. How do you help bank the underbanked? Obviously for Visa, their number one competitor is not MasterCard, it's cash, right? Because they only make money when there's a non-cash transaction, right? So it makes a lot of sense. So because our biggest mission is to bankify the underbanked, there is kind of a clear synergy there. And as we now put the money to work and we think about expanding to the rest of South America, working with somebody like Visa makes a lot of sense because they're already in those places.
Awesome. Great. Well, I know, thank you for spending your time with us, your evening with us, Edrizio. So everyone watching, this is RBL1 Live. This was Edrizio de la Cruz, CEO of Arcus. Thanks for sharing your insight. And for those that are watching, join us every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to hear from more great and inspiring founders as Edrizio. So thanks again, and good luck to Arcus. So thank you.